In this episode, I'm joined by Drukmo Gyal Dakini, an international singer, recording artist, and practitioner of Tibetan mantra healing. Drukmo discusses her childhood in Amdo, Tibet, and the early musical and spiritual influences of her family and community. We learn how a chance meeting with Dr Nida Chenagtsang, a frequent guest on the Guru Viking Podcast, and the man who would later become Drukmo's guru, kindled a passion for Tibetan medicine and spiritual practice in the Yuthok Nyingthig tradition. Drukmo also talks about her experiences of cultural differences between East and West, the history and power of mantra healing, the importance of personal practices, and addresses common misconceptions about being the devotee of a guru. So without further ado, Drukmo Gyal Dakini. Drukmo Gyal, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
You were born in 1989 in the village of Tongso, close to Rebkong County, in the Amdo region of northwestern Tibet. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your hometown and the circumstances in which you grew up.
It's a mountain village, almost at the border of farming area and nomadic area. That's also why it is quite unique culture that families will have two households in that area. One is called the summer house, which is more to the nomadic side of that landscape. And then the other is a bit lower, and you can cultivate different crops. So we grow green peas, potatoes, radish, and barley. So these are the main crops that people grow in the winter house, we call. So we will so the animals such as yaks, sheep will be shifted from the summer house to winter house according to the season. Yeah, and then the distance is about 3 kilometers apart. So I remember always walking with my grandma from winter house to summer house, just to feed the animals, and then stay the afternoon because the sun and the scenery is just amazing. And she would work, collect the yakdans and make pie by throwing them onto the walls and dry them under the sun. And then I would sometimes help her to collect some yakdan, sometimes just play on my own. So yeah, that's one of the memories. Yeah, one interesting thing is that I think one of those trips that I had with my grandmom is that we walked halfway, and it was the grassland was just filled with flowers. It was the best season of the year. So we sat there and we were having a small rest, and then my grandma saw this blue flower. I don't know the English name of that flower, but the blue flower looks like, has the shape of a witch hat, you know, the witches, the hat of a witch. So and she puts the pointy part of one flower into the like kind of like the stomach into the other one, and she moves back and forth, and she shows me, I think I was about 6 years old, and shows me like that, and she says, this is the sexholic flower. So it represents the action of intercourse. So of course I was very young to understand what she was really talking about, but I remembered that story and I remembered that flower. And later on I was telling that story to my parents, and which really shocked them, and they were like, who told you that? So I mean, that stuck in my head for a long time, that maybe in my early 20s, then I kind of recognized that was the first sex education I had ever with the flowers. Yeah, from the nature. So that was one of the things that I can recall from growing in that region with my grandparents. Yeah.
And speaking of your grandparents, you've mentioned that religion was an important part of your upbringing. And your father was following the Gelugpa tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, and your mother, the Nyingma style, and that your grandfather was your first guru. Now, I assume that's occurring when you're still a young girl there in Amdo. Could you talk a little bit about the role that religion played in your family?
Let's say the role of guru is always very much absent in everybody's like followers life. You have this certain amount of distance. You do not see your guru as you see your family. So I think the recognition of my grandpa being my guru is really because of his absence. Because he did many years of retreat, solitary retreat, and it was always yeah, like the times that we kids, like grandkids, meeting him was always somewhere in between his retreats or during his retreats. And then he has this little retreat hut inside the household as well. So where he does the retreat without communicating with people, he would just do his practices. But there is a little window. Like the retreat hut has like a wooden sliding door, and then it has this little window where the food is sent in. And then we kids will always go there and then open. He'll sometime open in between the practices, and then we will be watching him like this. Or receive blessings, yeah. So I think that was the let's say the conventional understanding of guru. But if like when I came to the West, then like the stimulation of how West is understanding Tibetan Buddhism, of course, impacts me on how I view my practice or my upbringing, and I have definitely not recognized enough of the guidance from the female members of my family, such as my grandma. That's why I remember that story was like a really strong story for me. And then also the occasional, because my grandma is not somebody who is expressive. She's often doing her work. She gave birth to 12 children, 4 died, and 8 survived. And she gave birth in the morning, and then basically next day she's already working. And her elder sisters, or her elder daughters, like my eldest aunties, were already mothers themselves. Like they were nurturing their younger sisters and brothers. So it's definitely a hard life. But I hardly experienced any. I hardly remember any days that she had unpleasant emotions. Like that really amazes me. I remember once, like I don't know what happened, but her lips were like expressing that she's not happy, but she doesn't have words. She's just I remember that expression, and I remember confirming with my mom what happened to grandma, why she had that face, and she said because she's sad, she's angry. And and then I hear stories like my grandma passed away in 2009 when I was about 15, 16, and I spent most of my summer holidays with her, maybe 2-3 months, since like when I started going to school. Then I could only go back in the summertime and spend time with them for the entire summer holiday for about two months, and then 1 month in the winter. But because I'm the grandchildren, yeah, I'm one of the grandchildren, so I won't be able to see a lot of the things, a lot of the characteristic aspects of them, because they will always treat us as children. So I later on heard some of the most romantic stories I've heard from my mom about them. So one thing is that my grandma adores my grandpa so much that she would cook twice every single meal, because she knows that my grandpa likes food that are cooked in small quantity. But the entire family has so many population, so she cooks twice. So she cooks in small quantity and a larger quantity for the children, because she wants to keep the taste and quality for grandpa. And that was very romantic and loving. It's a powerful teaching of love and compassion. I still have no idea how she could do that for all the time. And but yeah, without her support, I think my grandpa will also not be able to finish that like 2 decades of retreat. It's a co-working process.
Certainly. Do you know which lineages he was practicing in those 2 decades of retreat?
He practices mainly Longqing Nyingthig.
So, so I'm curious. You mentioned coming to Europe. You came to Europe in 2013 at around the age of 14. Initially, with an ambition to learn Spanish. That was the main objective, or improve your Spanish. And you talked about encountering the European, or I suppose Western view of Tibetan Buddhism and how that's affected your own view of your background. So I'm curious if you could outline some of the views you encountered when you came to Europe that made you reconsider or rethink your relationship to some of these practices.
I think Tibetan society is generally patriarchal. And this patriarch may not be the same sense as it happens as it's understood in the West, let's say. So there is a stronger power from the male side, but it doesn't necessarily diminish the power of women in the community. But women do tend to be less emphasized in many ways if we look into the modern settings. But in the traditional settings, women actually had more power than men. But that structure has been distracted, or let's say distracted by the industrialization, so for that reason it may seem a very chaotic thing to even explain, but let me just call it patriarch right now. Then it does influence us who grew up from that context, that cultural context, to see what's seen as something more important. Therefore, most of the lamas are important. Religious or non-religious leaders are always males, so that influences how we value our own households. So I think that really kind of I was in a box of that. And when I came to the West, then of course, after almost a century or even more, few centuries of revolution and whatnot, people have gained this awareness of many aspects that I would never even think about. Because industrialization has already been here for much longer time than us, and industrialization definitely brought a lot of other aspect of nuances in in life, in how everything is shaped and distributed and valued or understood. So those things do influence me in rethinking from the Western perspective. And when I do think from the Western perspective, it does often confuse me. It does quite confuse me. I think I need to read more, understand more in order to get things clear in my own head. Yeah.
What in particular confuses you?
The confusion itself. Like, why do I feel uncomfortable in thinking in certain ways? Like some of the traditional ways I grew up with. If I use those perspectives here, I feel uncomfortable. And when I use, but I think this is not normal, but it is becoming normal nowadays due to the globalization and this multicultural melting pot that everybody is out there to share, out there to learn. And it will definitely mess up their own systems. And it just needs a little bit, it's like the rain and the water, the dirt under the water is all like stirred, and you just have to wait for the rain to stop and the dust to settle. Then you have the clarity again.
I assume that your upbringing in Amdo is also where you began to sing and learn the melodies and songs that some of which you employ today as a singer. Would that be fair to say?
Not quite. Yeah, singing has always been a hobby for me, but singing anyway is a major culture in Tibet. Basically, nobody doesn't sing. Everybody sings and dances. It's like, who doesn't sing? It's not even a talent. I mean, that's the kind of view I grew up with. Everybody in the household sings, So, so I just took it as a hobby, as a way of relaxing myself. But then, like, furthermore, if we talk about the spiritual chantings that I'm doing in the, I think since 2015, that is rather a private practice that I had with family. Like, we would chant together, or we would set off for pilgrimage trips where we sing together and accumulate mantras and make voice offerings to certain places, mountains or gurus we meet. But that was very private. That was not something that I would that is something that the West influenced me, definitely. Like, I would never think of that as something that I would present on the stage. And it was so more often I think since 2010 I was involved in these singing competitions in China. So I did attend one of the major kind of like iconic singing contest, national contest, and I won top 30. So that kind of opened up some of the singing revenues, but quickly I retreated due to recognizing the cultural differences. It was the culture of artists in Chinese cities are, I think they were really on the verge of industrializing and like materializing the artists, and I think I had a strong resist in being materialized, so I retreated quickly. Whereas I started, I love languages, so that's why I started looking for other revenues, and I met a group of Spanish, no, they're Colombians who came to do cultural exchange in Golok area, Amdo, and yeah, they inspired me. And I thought, okay, I would like to try to learn Spanish and see if that helps me to get my passport. And it all worked out just in a longer period of time. So singing before coming to Europe was rather a leisure, and the things that I sing are more pop and folk. Yeah. But then when I came to the West, you go to a different country, then people ask you, oh, yeah, and then these nationality will anyway limit you there. So they expect you to tell them something about your culture, something about where you come from. So that kind of guided me. It was like this riverbank, so I just had to put the water there. And the mantra singing as a public performance was rather an encouragement under Dr. Nida. So he kept on pushing me for over 2 years. He actually gave me that idea in 2012, but I could not accept. For me, it was really private, really something that you only do as a... Yeah, it's like your vagina, yeah. It's like your genital organ. You do not just go and show your genital organ. It's something really private. Yeah. Giving that example, it seems that I'm showing my vagina now, but maybe not appropriate example, but the privacy, the physical privacy, or the yeah. Then the presentation of mantra chanting, I try to keep the traditional procedure of chanting mantras. So often in my concerts, I always start with Adhikali mantra and Omya Dharma interdependence mantra and 5-element mantra to purify 5 elements. And then I always finish with Vajrasattva. I invite the crowd to sing with me the short Vajrasattva, just in case, as a traditional procedure. Yeah, I think that's one of the methods I found that I could personally feel comfortable in presenting mantras in public realm.
Singing the Vajrasattva mantra at the end, in particular, was one of the ways which you reconciled presenting these more private spiritual practices publicly. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Not everyone will understand why those two things would come together. What is it about singing the Vajrasattva mantra with people would somehow relieve your concerns?
My upbringing tells me that whenever something is done wrong, or you would like to reconcile that situation, that bad karma, either it involves others or not, whether it's mental or physical or energetical, you recite Vajrasattva mantra minimally 3 times. That's my upbringing. So I explain every mantra I sing in my concert. And that's why my mantra may not actually be a conventional concert setting, but rather a 50% lecture, 50% chanting setting. This also gives the people the space to have a basic understanding of what they're chanting. And then, there's Google, there's internet, and they can always be inspired and to read and study more. Yeah.
I'm curious about your passion for languages. Of course, your English is excellent. You speak Tibetan. I expect you learn Mandarin in school also. What other languages have you pursued?
I don't know. I've attempted Spanish, so I still speak my broken Spanish. Since moving to Estonia, I haven't been able to practice much, but luckily I still remember my vocabulary, so I'm able to understand others and express my basic needs and interaction. Yeah. And then now, at the moment, I'm learning Estonian.
Good luck.
Yeah, I know.
That's
Yeah.
not an easy one.
14 cases. Yeah, it's not confusing, but it's a lot to process in the head.
Yeah.
And quite of a gym, quite of a brain gym.
Is your university course in Estonian or English?
It's an English
Uh-huh.
international course. Yeah.
Right. Mhm. Okay, well, I'm curious. You mentioned there Dr. Nida Chenagtsang, who's been a guest a number of times on this podcast. You mentioned he gave you the idea initially of singing these spiritual mantra songs in a public setting in 2012, and that's before you came to Europe. So I'm curious, how did you meet Dr. Nida Chenagtsang? Can you talk about how it was you came to meet him?
I think I met Dr. Nida. I would address him as Genla teacher. So I met Genla somewhere around 2011. His nephew is my classmate, so they needed urgently a translator, a Tibetan English translator, for a like a dinner conference, and so I was called in to help. That's how I met him, and then he invited me next day to have tea and a simple meal. And we had further we talked for a couple of hours, and that kind of that was the first interaction with Ganla. And he left me some books, and he left. He went back to Europe, and then a couple of weeks later he contacted me and asked me to start doing retreats. I know the concept of retreat, and I know that the male members of my family and communities would do retreat, but I don't know any female does that. So I mean, that was inspiring, and I thought, okay, I would have a try. And then my parents were very supportive. Like when they found out that I was getting ready to do a retreat, not so long, 7 days. It's a dintsum, a dintsam, like a 7-day retreat. So they were happy. They were like, okay, we will help you with other things. So my mom was my tamyok, so she would bring food and. After the first, after the completion of the first retreat, many things start to change. So one of the most important aspect of that change would be my confidence in Ganla as a guru, because after the retreat, my personal understanding of the Buddhist teachings I have received from family and from the community became clearer. It's an inner process. I don't know how I can semantically express that, but it became like a kind of like the fog went away, and then it was very clear that I would like to continue this path. The other aspect was that it drew me closer to Tibetan medicine. And there I started. Dr. Nida gave me the contact of a Tibetan hospital in Siling, where I worked as an intern for a couple of months and learned mainly external therapies from the external therapy department. And that was a precious experience, I would say. And Dr. Nida has been guiding me on both spiritual and medical teachings, and he has been guiding whoever meets him with the same level of enthusiasm and the same level of open-heartedness. And that also amazes me and sets an example of what compassion practice can be in one manifestation or one aspect. And from that understanding, it also helps me to kind of like naturally value others and their presence, and altogether this gives me a deeper, I don't want to use the word deeper, let's say understanding of interdependence. Because nothing Dr. Nida has taught me overtakes me. It only gives me more space to obtain, or not obtain, like to let everything be. Yeah. I don't know, maybe I'm too abstract now.
Not at all, actually. That's very interesting. I think many people, there can be a view that taking a guru can be a restrictive thing, or engaging in religious practice can be restrictive, involving denial or at the very least conformity to a group style, beliefs, ways of acting, and so on. Guru is like taking a kind of boss or dictator for life. Some people have that, and I think there is a reluctance there to engage in such a situation for that exact reason. I don't want to lose my autonomy. And in fact, that's a view that arguably could be said not just to be a misconception, that there are certain traditional presentations of the guru that could give that impression. Perhaps it's a wrong interpretation. Could you talk a bit about that?
In my understanding, guru has many, let's say, many types of guru. Let me put it that way. First guru is lineage guru. Whatever practice you're doing, for example, I'm doing Yuthok Nyingthig, then my lineage guru is Yuthok, medicine Buddha. I'm clear on that. And my root guru is the guru who helped me to connect with my lineage guru, let's say. So Dr. Nida, my root guru. And then we have guru of all phenomena. Like, that's basically what I was talking about, all phenomena. That includes all the beings and non-beings, not like humans and non-humans, nature. And all those phenomena, they are gurus. But your root guru helps you to understand that they're gurus. And there's no hegemony. Like this play of hegemony is rather a contamination of elsewhere, let's put it that way. And of course, that hegemony definitely provides a sense of security and a sense of autonomy, as you addressed. But that means that your fear is reserved. So you always live with that fear. You can only live with that fear and reconcile that fear with that sense of safety. So it's a choice. For some people, I think if that's how much they can handle for this life, they should do that way. They should keep that way. It's not like, I'm not talking in a sense that they're inferior. It's just it's many lifetimes that we have to go through. Like, you have to naturally give in or naturally surpass your fear. It's not something you can force. Like the capitalization forces everything to happen. It's like, I'm forcing my ability to grow, and then you become crazy. Yeah? So it doesn't come from force. It comes naturally, and it comes sometime, someday. And so the root guru and lineage guru helps you to recognize that guru of all phenomena. And then the fourth guru is black guru, or the texts, the texts, yeah. Because in the ancient time, people chant the texts once again. So the paper turn yellowish, reddish, and then black. So that they're addressed as black gurus. And then the last is inner guru, your inner recognition, your bodhicitta, let's say. So the place where you lay your bodhicitta. Maybe this is only one aspect of it. We choose aspect, we choose a focus, yeah. So I think I have chosen the focus on compassion, particularly, but it may not apply to everybody. Yeah, so my particular focus is on compassion practice. So that compassion practice is reflected from body, speech, and mind. So I reflected on my mental practice, my visualizations, my prayers. Who do I dedicate to? Like specific people and nominous. And why do I do that? Like, I often question myself, because often the creation stage and completion stage of Buddhist practices are really abstract and really single-pointed and abstract, and people can lose their basic focus. The basic focus should be clear. And so in my understanding, 5 types of guru. So you do not just on one guru. Yeah.
Fascinating. How does your particular focus on compassion express itself in terms of the practices that you do and the way you conduct yourself? And how was it that you came to that particular focus?
I also want to ask that question. I cannot I cannot give a concrete answer to that. I think there is this this ongoing debate in between cultural determination. Yeah, like, we are the product of our surroundings. Like, they shape us in how we're thinking. Okay, if we go that line, yes, my family shaped me. So I go with that. My culture, my family, and the other is like your like your nature, like this magical nature that don't know from where, from consciousness, traveling consciousness from different realms, or genetic, or don't know. Yeah. I can't say where it comes from, but I am here with all the interdependent contacts of all the human, non-human places I've been, have shaped me in such way. And yeah.
Does your emphasis on compassion primarily show itself in the motivation for your practices, or do you select specifically practices that cultivate compassion?
For me, compassion practice doesn't have a specific, let's say if we really go for specificity, like one-to-one, yeah, then yes, Om Mani Padme Hum, yeah, that's it. And all the rituals that are related to the Avalokiteshvara, yeah. But once you understand compassion nature, any practice you do is compassion nature. What is not compassion nature? Or let's say somebody who focuses on wisdom, yeah, let's say. And what is not wisdom? you see from one nature, one focus. That focus should not limit you, but that focus should be how do you call this? Like a way, a path for you to for you to emerge with everything. And that emergence doesn't come in the way how we understand our physical level. Yeah, our physical level will be is limited within time and space, so we just go within that. But our mind is free from that. Our mind can have multiple layers and multiple dimensions. So the most important is not to get attached to any of the layers, and to understand that you are this water, like you are not shaped anywhere, you can flow anywhere, but then not losing your single point. Yeah. So one of the most important sayings that many Tibetan, especially young people, that I am very interested in, because younger generation in Tibet may not always be very close to Tibet, like to Buddhist teachings, oftentimes. But one of the things that many young generations love is a saying that the founder of Serta, the biggest Buddhist college in Kham area. So Khambun Jigme Phuntsok. So he said, don't lose your standpoint and don't disturb others' view. So this is very important. Yeah. Don't lose your standpoint, but also don't disturb others' views.
What do you mean by don't disturb others' views?
Because you cannot impose your standpoint onto others. Oftentimes that's what happens. Like you think, okay, what worked for you is like mathematic, it can be just multiply itself in everybody. That's also how capitalism formulation is. Like they try to find one formula, okay, they apply it to everything. But here the fundamental logic is that you investigate everything to know yourself, and you work yourself out. And do not impose your methods to others. You share, but you do not impose. Yeah.
So, I'm curious. I'd like to ask you about Nak mantra. But before I do, after that first 7-day retreat, did you engage in further retreats under Dr. Nida Chenagtsang, your Genla's guidance?
Yeah, so that started by the end of 2011, and then retreat continued on a yearly basis for almost 1 to 2 months every year.
Let's talk about Nak, shall we? I think many people may be aware of mantra being used in a spiritual context, but also you use mantra in a healing, it's part of your healing system also in that context. I'm curious, what is a mantra? What are the purposes of mantra? And how are mantras specifically used in your healing system?
Mantra for healing started from, let's say, written record, started from Bon religion. So there was this pre-medical text before Jushi, Bomshi, yeah? And Bomshi was written by Bon Master. And many convenient rituals and mantras were introduced in that book in order to heal. Then, of course, that became one of the sources. And then the spiritual mantras imported, let's say, I don't know, like introduced from India, also became part of it. And then the mantras that are locally revealed, like through Pemasambhava's revealing system, dharma system. So these became the three main sources, let's say, of healing mantras. And often these mantras are practiced by religious people and doctors themselves. So they prescribe the mantras as a supplementary practice to manage the energetical state of the patient while they're receiving their intake medical treatments or external therapies. So mantras are often bound together with diet, lifestyle, external therapies, and medicine. That is also why most of the, let's say, not most, what I know, like all hospitals in Tibet have their shrine room. So usually the herbs, after being produced, they will all be sent to the shrine room and many days of blessing puja. Then they will shift back to the selling department for people to purchase. Yeah. So this is practiced.
And is the power of the mantra in, say, healing context in the effect it has on the mind when one repeats the mantra, or is there something intrinsic to the syllables and sounds and meanings of the mantra itself that has a healing effect? In other words, does it matter what one says, or that simply that one's using a repetitive series of sounds to have the healing effect?
So according to mantra healing system, the mantras are shaped according to their shape, the shape of the syllables, because Tibetan language and Sanskrit language are designed by seeing the shapes of the chakras and channels inside the body. Yeah. So when I say chakras and channels, I refer to the veins, arteries, muscle tissues, nerves, ligaments, tendons, so all the shape of those. So when we chant those mantras, they resonate with the certain part of our body. They have like resonation when we're chanting. And the other is the sound. Yeah, sound I think is more famous in the West, like more recognized. Yeah, mantra through sound. But actually, mantra through sound is only one according to mantra healing system. And there's shape, so you just visualize the shape. You don't even have to chant, you visualize the shape. Like silent chanting is actually more powerful than chanting with voice. Chanting with voice helps you to concentrate, but powerful chanting is silent chanting. And then the third one is the meaning. So some mantras, they have meanings. So some Sanskrit words, some Tibetan words. So you investigate like the most oftenly used words, like soha, but, sot, yeah. These are all like repeatedly used or appearing syllables in many mantras.
It's fascinating. Does the practice level or the level of attainment of the mantra wielder affect the power of the mantra? And also, what is the role, if any, of initiation in the application and effectiveness of these mantra?
Could you rephrase? I didn't understand.
Well, the first question was, what does the practice level or the attainment level of the person who's using the mantra affect its power? For example, someone like myself with no level or attainment in any mantric or indeed spiritual systems at all, I can, of course, read a mantra, like you said, from Google. But then somebody like you or Dr. Nida Chenagtsang, who are practitioners of this system with deep retreat, deep practice, initiation, understanding, and so on in these systems. Of course, that represents a very different practice level or level of attainment between us. So it's that sort of context. Does the practice level of the mantra wielder affect the power of a mantra?
Yeah, of course. That's why we have the pre-mantra practices. Like before you actually chant all the available healing mantras, there are more than 100. Like every organ has their own mantra. So before you go there, you have to first purify your 5 elements. So we do the 5 element mantras. And there's a larger number to it, suggested by the practitioners in the lineage, to first purify your own 5 elements. Then when you chant, it's effective for you and effective for others. And this mantras is not only chanting. You chant, you bless substances. So you have mantrified substances such as water, most commonly used. And also other things that can be used as therapies.
So I know our time is coming to an end. So perhaps I'll ask you a couple more of my most pressing questions. Something you said as I was researching your various interviews and talks, and I'll link some of those. Actually, you did a TED talk in Tallinn, very fascinating talk. Actually, I'll link that in the show notes so people can check that out. But in one of the things I found about you, you mentioned your state of mind when you're doing the performances of your mantra, Tibetan healing mantra and spiritual mantra performances. And you contrasted it with the typical kind of singing state of mind that I suppose you would have done in your pop singing days also, or when you sing pop.
Pop singing days, I don't know, maybe like really professional pop singers, they would find that, because it's a matter of dedication. It's a matter of your connection to the practice you do. So if somebody who is dedicated to pop and really connected to pop and pop music, I'm sure they experience the similar experiences that I have with mantra. Like with mantra, if I chant, I surpass time and space. Like one of the experiences that I can recall is one of these concerts we had in France, south of France, Rodez. At this concert, it felt like half an hour. It really just felt like a half an hour, but it was already three hours passed by. And there were 100 people, 100 plus, and there were even some children in the front, and nobody left. And nobody, like the kids didn't have any reactions, and it was just magic. Yeah.
Okay, well, Drukmo, thank you very much for being so generous with your time here and talking with me. What's the best place people can reach you to find out more and hear your singing, hear your performances, and also your teaching?
I think one way would be my personal website. Another way is some of the organizers that I work with. In France, we have Yuthok Nyingthig Toulouse, and in US we have Pure Land Farms, and in Estonia we have Sorokang Estonia, and in some of the Sorokangs in Sorokang organizations in Poland and Czech. Yeah, so through these organizations or myself. Yeah.
Drukmo Gyal, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another Guru Viking podcast. For more interviews like these, as well as articles, videos, and guided meditations, visit www.guruviking.com.